In order to truly understand the war on drugs and the ways it's inextricably connected to the overdose crisis, we must first understand the roots of drug policy in the United States. For that, we need to go back to the late 1800s, before the very first laws restricting drug use came to be. Yes, you heard that right. The very first laws restricting drug use didn't appear until the 20th century. So, what changed? For most of the 1800s, drugs were not the only thing that was unrestricted. Migration to the US was too, and folks were largely free to enter the country. But in the mid-1800s, as immigration from less desirable regions increased, policymakers and big business began to view these immigrants as a growing threat to their economic power and to their way of life. With anti-Chinese sentiment on the rise, policymakers came up with a two-part plan. First, bar all immigration from China, and second, criminalize immigrants already in the US. While they could not make it outright illegal to be Chinese, they could move instead to criminalize opium, a drug whose use was largely associated with East Asian culture, even though white upper-class women were the primary users at the time. And throw Chinese people in jail by passing the 1909 Opium Exclusion Act. Although the war on drugs is a term that would not be coined for another 62 years, this first piece of drug policy marked the beginning of a pattern. Undesirable populations would be connected to a substance, and then said substance would be swiftly vilified and criminalized. This strategy has been replicated again and again to maintain power for the ruling class and politicians, and to vilify and control and ostracize others. Cocaine, for example, was largely associated with black folks at the turn of the century, leading to the racist myth of the dangerous criminal black men emboldened by the effects of cocaine preying on southern white women, a completely unfounded but oft-repeated narrative that led to an uptick in violence against black men presumed to be under the influence. Criminalization of cocaine soon followed. Following a wave of immigration from Mexico in the early 1900s, cannabis, a drug that was used for medicinal purposes, started to be referred to by its name in Spanish, marijuana. The term was used to racialize the drug. Like the use of opium and cocaine, the use of cannabis was soon prohibited. Even the movement for alcohol prohibition in the 1920s was actually rooted in anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, and anti-immigrant sentiment, with many of its most vocal leaders being on the record bemoaning the immigrant hordes from Eastern and Southern Europe that were coming into the country.
No more beer, my heart to cheer. So long highball, so long gin. Oh, tell me when you're coming back again.
So, yeah, historically, our drug policy has never been rooted in science. It's been rooted in racism and prejudice, and designed to preserve wealth and power for those who already have it at the expense of everyone else. The war on drugs, declared 50 years ago on June 17, 1971 by then-President Richard Nixon, was sold to us as a matter of public safety. But here's what John Ehrlichman, one of Nixon's top aides, had to say about the true motive behind the war on drugs.
The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. And you understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Now, did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did.
Since then, both parties have continued to fuel this war for their own political benefit. So, what exactly has the war on drugs accomplished? It prompted the creation of the Drug Enforcement Agency in 1973, which today has a budget of over $2 billion. It led to the unscientific drug scheduling system and imposed harsh mandatory minimum sentences for drug offenses. And it helped build the police state and mass incarceration apparatus that has made the United States home to the largest prison population in the world. It has done nothing to curb drug use. And on top of all that, the war on drugs has set the stage for the overdose crisis, which is now killing our families, friends, and neighbors.